I am Danny Otto. Welcome into another episode of That Recap Show. Now, before we get into the episode, just wanted to issue major spoiler alert. We are going to be going over everything that happened in Season 2, Episode 5 of the Bad Batch series. So if you haven't watched that episode yet, you may want to pause this video, head over to Disney Plus, check that out, and then come back and enjoy the breakdown. Now, with that out of the way, let's start the show.
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.
All right, joining with me to break down everything from episode 5 of season 2 of The Bad Batch, it's Johnny Rico.
Hello.
Hello.
How we doing?
You know what? Consider my palate officially cleansed after 2 episodes in a row. We were talking about this. I mean, look, it was a good episode. It was much needed after the heaviness of Last of Us, which we did a recap of also.
So this is a good balance between this and that show for sure.
Exactly. So I'm not complaining at all because now we've got this nice balance of a fun episode after the heaviness of an amazing series that we get in the Last of Us. So no complaints from here, but my palate is thoroughly cleansed at this point. But yeah, I mean, we were talking about this. This was a good episode. I think I liked last week's episode just a little bit better, only because, you know, we got John Ralphio, who was one of my favorite characters from Parks and Rec. But this was a very, straightforward episode. This was a treasure hunt. Let's go find some treasure. Like that. That's what it was. And I think it followed the mold of some really classic treasure movies, like adventure/treasure movies, like National Treasure and like Raiders of the Lost Ark from Indiana Jones, stuff like that. I thought where we have, not only the main focus is, let's find this treasure, but we also we use that as kind of small character developments. We have character arcs throughout that also. And I think one of them we got was really just, having to kind of give something up to survive.
Indiana, let it go.
But I could go on and on and on about that. But those were the two things that kind of stuck in my head immediately when we got this episode. And like I said, nothing wrong with this episode. I think it was a fun episode in general. And I think, it did flesh out some of the characters a little bit more that I'm going to get into, I guess, more in my takeaway. One in particular is Fee, and I'm liking that character, and I kind of see potential that I want to talk about in my takeaway of where we could have more of her kind of more in the future. But Rico, before I get too far into anything, what were some of your instant reactions to episode 5?
Yeah, this is another kind of like adventure of the week style episode. You're usually the one throwing out the pop culture references around here, Danny. But I actually have one of my own.
Ooh.
First of all, this scene kind of reminded me a little bit of two different ones. The first one is when they finally reached the heart of the mountain, and they pulled it out of the kind of the plug, I guess you could say, that it was kind of put into whatever it was. But and then that awakes the giant mech that we get at the end of the episode, right? First of all, the way the beam shoots out into the sky kind of reminded me of Godzilla, shooting his mouth beam into the sky at one point. I thought that was pretty cool. When it kind of stood up and we kind of see how this giant creature kind of standing with this really long neck feature, right, and a really round head. I don't know if you've ever played the Horizon Zero Dawn game, but there's some big giant kind of robotic species there called tall necks, and it looks just like those. So if you've ever played those games, I thought that was kind of a cool little comparison to make in between the show and that game right there. But I'll get more into the mechs a little bit later for sure. But yeah, this was definitely, I used this word last week, it's definitely filler, adventure of the week kind of stuff. Like But I was saying there's nothing wrong with some good filler, right? We get these fun little side missions that kind of take us into new locations in Star Wars that can kind of give us a look at different areas within the Star Wars universe that we don't really get to touch on in other shows, right?
Yeah.
In this case, they're going on to find some treasure that has to do with some that goes back to like pre-Republic days, and I think that was really cool. Kind of give us again, yeah, that the Indiana Jones National Treasure style mission where they're going on solving puzzles. Uh, Another little solid reference right there to Jedi Fallen Order. If you remember all the puzzles you have to do in that game, I
Yep.
feel like that's where this will. Again, I'll get on that a little bit later, but I thought that was really cool how that all played into this episode and how the team had to work together as one unit, and then at one point they get separated because of that monster. Um, so, you're never gonna not have comparisons between Star Wars and Indiana Jones, both being Lucasfilm projects, and they're both directly inspire each other. So I think it's always really cool when you get these like direct episodes that just kind of feel like an Indiana Jones adventure in Star Wars. So that's really fun.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we also get to see some cool pre-Republic stuff introduced. So that was nice.
Yeah, I mean that part was very interesting, and I mean I go to you when I have questions for Star Wars. Because don't get me wrong, I love Star Wars, but like you definitely know things like on a higher level than I do. So I defer to you when I don't know. And talking before we filmed, I'm interested in that stuff, and I'm interested to see, just like you, why why we had those little breadcrumbs for pre-republic stuff, and if that's
Mhm.
going to lead to anything moving forward. But before we get into too much, you want to get to some big takeaways?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna kick us off, and just like I was saying, and you were kind of leading into it also, kind of goes exactly with what I was saying is one of the main, I guess, kind of things that those movies have in common is we do have some character development. We have some character arcs in those treasure movies. They're not just, we're going to get this treasure. We got the treasure. Movie over. It's, they grow along the way, and they have to learn that, they have to work together. B, they have to, they may have to sacrifice something to save the party in general, to make it out alive, to escape, something like that. So that character development, I think we saw a very small version of that character development, because look, it's a 20 something minute episode. We're not getting major movie character development. But from the start of the episode, when we have Fee, um basically the first example that I'm bringing up is, exactly like you said, when they first get separated, and
Mhm.
she makes it very clear all she cares about is finding the treasure, because she goes, they'll be fine. You don't even know if they're crushed. Like, she didn't care at all.
Yeah,
But
just that's one thing on your mind.
exactly. And I mean, you could even see like the hesitation in Omega going, okay, like kind of worried about everybody else, but okay. And then I mean, obviously they were able to get in touch with each other and say, hey, we'll meet up, we're gonna go through these other tunnels, and we'll figure out a way to find you guys. But just giving that as a very quick example of her only caring about the treasure, finding the treasure. That's it. She doesn't even care that those people could have been injured, anything.
Mhm.
Um, to the end, her giving up the heart of the mountain to stop the mech, basically, from its rampage and stuff like that, when even moments before that, she was like, I'm not giving that up. That's the whole reason we came. Like, she had to
Right.
have that moment of, okay, this is the only way we're going to escape. This is the only way that everyone survives.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's not a ton of character development, but I do think it is a small step towards character development, which leads me kind of more into what I was trying to get at. Is I think uh Fee is going to become a bigger character with the Bad Batch because of this connection from this episode. I'm thinking maybe that this was the breadcrumb from this episode that we're supposed to have as a takeaway, meaning that they just all grew together as a group, and Fee included in that group. Sid had nothing to do with this episode from start to finish. Was not in the episode at all. This was all Fee and the Bad Batch group. Period. So I'm wondering if, we had our kind of predictions and theories for Sid last episode and stuff. I'm wondering if going along that same line where there's going to be a separation with the Bad Batch group and Sid, if eventually this episode leads to more of a coming together with the Bad Batch and Fee moving forward. And so we get that kind of where there is, after maybe the mid-season finale, we get more of a connection with that group and that group going forward type of thing. And they have more of a dynamic with Fee instead of Sid. It could end up panning out to be nothing, but for me, that's one breadcrumb that I took away that could potentially have more roots in the like coming episodes type of thing. But Rico, what were some of your takeaways from this episode?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Fee. I think it's really funny how, like, one, she kind of led them into this kind of dangerous trap of a mission, and she has to, of course, be talked into giving up the one thing that she was so focused on getting. After it was a pretty convincing argument because as soon as they plugged the damn thing back in, it
Yeah,
was just about to fire on their ship.
yeah,
Just that fantastic TV timing and everything. But I thought it was really funny how at the end how Omega was the one that kind of saw how, like, there was actually kind of a good reason why that actually ended up being for them being there. Like, if they hadn't shown up there, someone might have found that, and maybe that weapon might have been used for harm by somebody else. So it
yeah,
was kind of good that they got there before anybody else in that sense. So it was kind of a matter of perspective, and that kind of leads a little bit into my takeaway is that we're kind of starting to see Omega become more and more of her own person. I feel like every time we get little shots focusing on her, we're kind of seeing a little bit more of her, like, her own personality start to grow a little bit. So she's starting to learn tech a little bit more. She's going out with Wrecker and them, and she's making deals and bets and stuff like that on their behalf. Like,
yeah,
she's taking initiative in situations like that. And I think her genuine interest in finding artifacts like this, like Fee, like you see in the way that she talks with her at some point. I think when they're on the way to the mission, and Hunter's watching them from kind of the background. I think you can see that Hunter is starting to notice that as well. Um, and I think that's all going to kind of play into that whole uh everyone's character development as you were talking about later on the season when we're talking about what's going to happen in the end of the season, what's going to happen with them, and are they going to go do their own thing? Is Hunter going to let Omega go off with Fee maybe and do her own thing? That could be a whole other thing. We could talk about a little bit about that later. Uh, but yeah, I think that's all going to come to a head into the finale, like later on this season, or maybe even the mid season finale. Who knows when they want to address this kind of a thing? Um, but yeah, I think there's some interesting stuff that they're kind of laying seeds for to blossom later on.
yeah, exactly. I think that's perfect. A perfect way to put it is we're getting all these little seeds, even in filler episodes,
Yeah,
um, that we don't know when they're going to like sprout and affect like the main storyline and stuff like that. And it's really interesting to kind of watch and see when
yeah,
that's going to happen, basically.
yeah. It's Omega's not only just learning from the Bad Batch; she's learning from all these different people that they're interacting with too, and then that's all going into that little soup of what's making her own first person, right? You put all these ingredients in a bowl, and this makes you this unique person, and that's what she's starting to become as she gets a lot older, as you see. So it's a fun little journey we're on here.
Yeah, definitely. You want to do some predictions?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, why don't you kick us off?
Okay. So we were talking about the mechs earlier. The cool shot of them coming up from the dirt and just kind of walking along that in that nice landscape. I thought that looked really cool. Um, but one of the things I thought of when I first saw it, I was like, if you played it, Jedi Fallen Order, this looks just like the Zepho. The big kind of like they were kind of like a force wielding species that kind of are the stuff of legend. You play as Cal, kind of going on this journey to learn a little bit more about them. And at one point, you kind of have like this really cool little force like conversation with them. It's really interesting stuff. Um, but they were like the species that were kind of like on their own planet, and they were kind of messing around with the force. And there were some people who were believers, some who weren't. And there were some who ended up like leaving the planet. and kind of doing their own thing. But I would wonder if this could be some form of like Zepho technology. Who knows what they were capable of back in the early days, especially with technology like this, right? This looks like something that could have been like a precursor to like the AT-ATs or something like that. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy. Um, but I think this would be a really cool way to set up some kind of connection to Jedi Fallen Order. It would be really cool if the Bad Batch was the kind of the characters that ran into maybe characters like Cal before the events of the game, maybe perhaps. I think that would be pretty interesting. But again, that's what is so cool about bringing in this kind of early pre-Republic stuff is that you can dive into these new areas of the lore that make for interesting storytelling going forward. Because I was one for hoping that it would be like High Republic related because I feel that that's the stuff they've been doing in the comics and books that we still have to yet like see in film or TV. I think the Acolyte might be the first thing we get set in
Yeah.
that era. Uh, but I want to start getting more hints of that too. Like I want to get more High Republic stuff. So I think that it just gets me more excited to see more pre episode 1 is what I say like stuff introduced on screen, and I want more and more of that all day.
I mean, I really don't have too big of a prediction. I mean, I'm sitting back and I'm on the lookout for the Wookiee Jedi. Like that's for me, that's what I'm waiting for right now. I mean, do I want progression of the main storyline with Bad Batch and Crosshair and seeing where those two stories are going to start like intertwining again and everything like that? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Very much so. Do I really want to see the Wookiee Jedi? Absolutely, I do.
I mean, we also were kind of talking about it more in our takeaways too. That all the stuff with Fee and Omega and all that stuff is really kind of more in our prediction as well, because that's the stuff from the season that we really have to look forward to. But yeah, there's still a lot of fun little like Easter eggs and little side adventures that we can still go on again, like Gungi the Wookiee Jedi, and I want to see that freaking lightsaber in stores soon. Dang it!
Oh man, that looks so cool.
I want it so bad.
Man, my wallet hates you, but I'm definitely probably gonna have to get
it. Hates you.
You're the one who showed it to me. It showed me how cool it looked.
It is. I did.
Before that, I could have stayed away from it. I could have stayed away, Rico. I don't have a bunch of these expensive hilts and lightsabers like you.
Good.
But anyway, that's what we think. Let us know in the comments below. What did you think of episode 5? And what breadcrumbs or seeds do you think we got from this episode that could lead to something further down the line in the main storyline? And as always, don't forget, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to hear about all of our audio and video releases. Bye, everybody!
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.